Okay, thank you all very much for joining us today. This is Joanne Martonic, Senior State Marketing Manager with RBSF. Thank you again for joining us. Today we will hear from Pennsylvania Fish and Boat Commission, PFBC for short, and Gavin Advertising to discuss search engine marketing. Gavin is a boutique digital brand communications agency located in Pennsylvania that works with a variety of clients to drive digital outcomes and communication strategies. Mandy Arnold, President and CEO, and Jason Altland, Senior Coder, are presenting on search engine marketing strategies and the work Gavin has done for the PFBC over the past several years. We'll then also have Amber Neighbors and Carl Richardson with the PFBC present. And Amber is the Director of the Bureau of Outreach, Education, and Marketing. She spent her entire career working communications and marketing positions for the state environmental and conservation agencies. Carl Richardson is the agency's recruitment, retention, and reactivation specialist. He has been with PFBC since 1992. He has an area of interest in human dimensions, that's natural resources, and participation in outdoor recreation. So without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to Mandy Arnold.
Hi there, Joanne. Thanks so much for having us today, and greetings to everyone who's on the webinar. We're very excited to give this presentation to share some insights and some lessons learned that we've gained in working with the Pennsylvania Fish and Boat Commission. As Joanne had mentioned, we have several guests with us today, and everyone will be contributing to the presentation, and we're looking forward to answering any questions you might have. Very briefly about Gavin, we are a DBE, SBA, and WBENC certified agency. We were founded in 2011 with offices in central Pennsylvania. We have very deep experience in web SEO and search engine marketing, and we've served more than 200 brands and high performance outcomes. So we are a small boutique agency with 20 plus staff, and we have an excellent reputation serving organizations across the entire US in government as well as nonprofit and for-profit entities. Very quickly on the next slide, Joanne, we've got the speakers that are presenting, as Joanne had mentioned, just so you can put a face with the name of who you're going to be hearing from, and everyone will be contributing to the presentation today. What you will hear today, very briefly, and then I'll hand it over to Jason, is that we're going to be covering search engine marketing. And Joanne, you can go to the next slide there. We'll be covering search engine marketing. What are keywords? We get a lot of questions about how to leverage keywords, how it should work on your website, how it should work to support campaigns, and then also best practices for search engine marketing. There are a lot of details specific to having successful campaigns, and also there's a lot of misinformation, and we want to make sure that people are well informed as not only as they select partners, but as they implement campaigns on their own. We'll show you some successful examples of Pennsylvania's SEM efforts, and then also we'll give you some essential advice so that you can try to utilize the information on the campaigns that you are going to be implementing on your own or with a partner. So from here, the next slide, I'm going to go ahead and hand over to Jason Altland, our senior coder. So Jason, I'll let you take it away.
Awesome, thank you much. So we're going to go through search engine marketing. So SEM literally is search engine marketing. This is at a very, very root level. It's a very effective method of reaching your target audience, generating new customers, and increasing revenue, all via paid search. So this is any time that someone's actually doing a search for a product or a service, or even just doing some research. So if you think about it, it's a little bit different than social media advertising and things of that nature. Everything has its place, but this is very, very specific. So if you think the last time that you did a search specifically for a brown Labrador retriever, you get results for brown Labrador retrievers and things for pets, very specifically dogs. And that's all in revolving around keywords and how they're found and everything else. So to sum it up, SEM is really your search intent. How can we get to the root of people's search intent at that moment when they are on the internet physically looking for that specific search phrase? So it could be for anything really. So while we're going to show you things with the PA Fish and Boat here and examples on how to go through things, same thing, the same exact practice can be played out through a wide variety of scenarios. So on the next slide, we're going to get into some SEM facts. So as of November 20th, all paid search on Google is marked with the word ad in the upper left-hand corner. And I'll show you an example in a moment. And that's been evolving. In October of 2020, all of the ads had a gray background, and that has since fallen off. And in November, they just went to the small thing that said ad there. And that's just an evolving evolution. Typically, the results could be in the first 3 spots. It could be 1, it could be none, and it could be 2. Ads are purchased based on keywords, and they're bid on much like an auction. So where the highest bidder is going to rank first. So there could be, in a very common scenario, is that there's a word or a phrase that is very highly sought after, and you may have a bunch of people going out after it. Now I know legal and law firms all go after words like mesothelioma because of the asbestos and things of that nature. So it's the same type of thing. Words that have a higher likelihood of having multiple people are going to be a little bit more expensive. Specifically looking at those, knowing where your audience is looking and where maybe your competitors aren't placing words is where you can gain advantage. An example, throwing money away all day and trying to go up against Netflix is probably never going to happen because they have deeper pockets. However, knowing where Netflix is placing all of their money, you could very specifically target other words around them and have a very successful campaign in that regard. There's some search qualifiers that can be added. So you can target people not only just by the keyword, but also by their geography. So people searching for a fishing license in Pennsylvania, and it wouldn't show in Maryland. People's age, so anybody who's over the age of 18 in Pennsylvania. Time, location, language. So you can target a Spanish ad very specifically to an Hispanic audience. So things of that nature, when you can get specifically to the people who you're looking for, and maybe only, I only want people in Pennsylvania that are looking for these specific keywords that are English speaking during the hours of 3 to 5 p.m. because that's when the majority of my traffic comes in. And SEM is typically thought about as Google. However, Bing and Yahoo shouldn't be ruled out. While Google is by far superior and has a much more robust system and has way more traffic, you can also still get business through Bing and Yahoo as well. And on the next screen here, I'm going to show you an example. So with something that we've all seen before, and you can see that little ad there up next to the very first result. But this one I just searched for campgrounds with cabins. And the very specific one here is Lake Huron, and it was the secret campground. So you can see this is an ad targeting me that I'm looking for a campground with a cabin to come and rent a cabin around Lake Huron. Now I was in York, Pennsylvania, so this one's probably a bit far away from me, but it shows you an example of how things can be done very properly. I would probably say maybe not Lake Huron is a great example for me being in York, Pennsylvania, but you can really get the example here of how you can target someone and how not having some of those qualifiers also can impact your search results. Because if you let things wide open too far, you can run the risk of hitting people. Now, I know we're talking about fishing licenses, and obviously there's going to be some bleed over. So we're going to have people in Maryland and upper New York who are going to be coming in for day visiting, and there's still people that we want to target as well. And you can target those specific people by counties and zip codes, lots of different ways that you can do that. But letting things wide open without a geography, you can run the risk of having your budget just go through the roof then, because now you're hitting people in maybe Arizona or Lake Huron. That's really not that big of a search qualifier for that one. So the next one here, we're talking a lot about keywords. So keywords are words or phrases that help describe the product or service that will help people, that will help you determine the search engine and how to display your ad. So if I was searching for Bass Pro Shops and lures and things of that nature, we could do specific keywords around fishing lures, and we could promote maybe Dick's Sporting Goods or another brand, something of that nature. So you can look to see maybe it's a specific phrase. So a phrase would be buying a fishing license in Pennsylvania. You could do fishing licenses in Pennsylvania, or you can narrow that down and just say fishing license, and then use the qualifier, like I said, those demographics, and narrow things down to the specific area as well. On the next one over here, I'm going to tell how to determine some of the keywords. So keywords should really match your search intent. So you can determine for the intent or the objective of what's going on. And we're going to show you an example in a few slides. But an example here would be fishing licenses. And that one would show for things like where to buy a fishing license, buying a fishing license online, or even do kids or children need fishing licenses. So having things open up in a very narrow phrase like fishing license or purchase, buy fishing license online, do I need a permit? Things of that nature can show for a wide variety of things. There are very specific keywords that can help you determine these, or not keywords, services that can help you determine these. And some of the tools out there would be like Moz, SME Rush. Google has one called the Google Keyword Planner. It works out well as you type in some phrases and it'll tell you some examples as well. You can also, if you have Google Analytics and Google Search Console connected together, you could also look to see how people are viewing your website and what search phrases are coming through Google Console as well. So you can actually see the phrases that are searched and your website then displays. So you could use them to see in a backwards way to kind of back into some keyword sets. Now, we'll get into some best practices at the very end, but there's a common myth that having more keywords is better. So if I had a list with 100 keywords, and even though half of them aren't used, I'm not paying anything for half. I would tell you to really refine those down. Keep your keyword list around 20, and when you get to more than 20, I want to break off into another campaign or another ad set. When you go more than that, you really run the risk of is the ad that I'm showing the specific one for the search intent? So a lot of times Google will say, hey, we found these keywords, and if you would add these 4 more on, it might be better. You have to realize that Google is a money-making machine, so the more keywords you have, the more potential people clicking, the more revenue that they generate. But we want to look at the intent. So the intent of the ad that I want to display is for people in Pennsylvania, in the southeast Pennsylvania, to purchase a fishing license for trout. And we want to make sure that my ad set and my keywords really match up together. So we're talking about trout, we're talking about fishing licenses, not talking about anything else in that ad set. If we get outside of that, we want to create a new ad set, a new ad grouping, so that way we can get to the correct search intent and display the correct ad to the person that's searching. So the next slide, we're actually going to get into some best practices and how we kind of shape things out for the Pennsylvania Fish and Boat Commission. So here you can kind of see what we do at a very high level is we work hand in hand with Amber and Carl in this instance, and we kind of plan the whole year. And we have a budget and we know what we're going after. So we reach out to Carl and Amber and we ask for how was last year? How are things going? Is there anything that's changed? When is the trout season opening? When are times that our fishing license is a little bit slower? And is there anything new that we want to go after this year and try to target? So you can see in this example, we're really planning out the year. So we're getting into pre-trout season. So we're warming people up. We're telling them that we're stocking the rivers. Things are getting ready. Do you have your fishing license? Are you ready? And then we're getting into trout season and we're pushing that and we're telling people it's out there and the trophy fish are there and you need to get your fishing license and it's so easy to get. Buy it online, click here. And the next one down there is family fun. And you can see we're gonna target each one of these a little bit differently. So the top ones, pre-trout, we're going after avid anglers. Family fun, now we're going after people who are maybe have lapsed. We're going after people who were trying to make a memory with their children. Go out there with your family and your friends. Make it a date night. Make it however it is that we're trying to get people to get out there and do things. So this is kind of at a very high level how we're planning out the year. And then you can see we're budgeting out the percent on the very far right-hand side next to December. We're budgeting out how many sales are we trying to get, what's the percent of the goal, and how are we going to break out our budget ad spend in between these. And sometimes, we really want to back things through pre-trout the whole way through family fun. So in the next slide, you can kind of see now we're taking that big overall year budget and we're breaking it down. And this is kind of where we're getting down into, okay, what's that intent? So in this campaign, we're gonna do a lot of things. We're gonna do social media, we're gonna do events and contests, community building, a whole wide variety of things. We're really gonna focus in on Google Ads, the date range. You can see the demographics, the age ranges that we're going after, the locations, urban and suburban, southeast to south central, because we could have different trout openings. It could open earlier in one area versus another. And we're really trying to define at our side of things in conjunction with the PA Fish and Boat, what is the objective here? So we really want to drive sales and community growth. Our big thing is to push licensed sales. That's the end all be all. That's what we're here for. And then our key metrics, it's online sales. And then we're going to track conversions and conversion tracking through some analytics through Google and also through some data that Carl and Amber would have at their side. We're going to marry the two together and we're going to determine if we've been successful through this. And during this entire time, as we're launching this and we're going through things, we really want to make sure that we're touching base with the client to make sure that, hey, we're sending things through, we're seeing a lot of conversions. How are fishing license sales on your side? And Carl would respond back and tell us, they're up, they're down, and we can make changes accordingly. So that way things really are on autopilot. So that's kind of how we plan those two out. And the next one down. So these are some fun campaign imagery. So along with search engine advertising, Google, you can also do some display ads as well. Here's some that we ran over the last 2 years. And once again, and I say the intent and trying to get to the specific audience and things of that nature. Once again, it's the same thing here. We want to make sure that we're showing images. So it's family fun for couples. We're showing, a husband and a wife out fishing. We want to make sure that we're showing a wide demographic. We're talking to a wide spectrum of America. We want to make sure that we encompass everybody. Trout season, it's open statewide. We're protecting our waters and our waterways. However we're doing it on a lot, very bright, very things that would make people say, oh yeah, fishing is coming up. I've got to get my fishing license, or I forgot. I got to get out there. You're right. So in the next slide here, you can kind of see some of the campaign results. So in this one here, very particularly, with the preseason, we broke things down to kind of show you a little bit of behind the scenes of the search engine marketing via Google Ads. And then we had display with Google. And then we also had social media marketing via Facebook. And you can kind of see the money that was spent. And then the duration was pretty much all the same. The results and impressions of how many people saw. And then overall the number of purchases that were made online. So you can kind of go through and do the math. And you could say, reasonably, that Google Ads very specifically outsold people who would have seen the ad on Facebook. by a very high likelihood. So overall conversions through Google Ads in this campaign were actually much more successful than its counterpart on social media. Both of them are very engaging. We have people out there who would see an ad, may click through, think about it. They're also seeing things on Facebook. They're remembering that they need to do it. So they're seeing our ads in a lot of different places, and all of the language, all of the imagery, all of the content all works together. So when they're seeing that ad on social media, trout season's now open, and they think, oh yeah, I need to get it, they can bounce back and look at some of the other things, doing some search intent. We're also doing some remarketing. So when they hit a landing page and they're seeing, you know, hey, I need to get a credit card to be able to purchase, I forgot it. We're displaying an ad to them, you know, a day or two level to kind of remind them, hey, we need to get you to get a license. You know, let's get out there. Let's enjoy the outdoors. So as you can see overall, how things played out between Google Ads with very visual and having some very graphical things versus people who's directly searching very, very specifically for buying a fishing license. You can see the intent behind it versus someone who's casually grazed by an ad. And the results, and like I said, they're very substantial, and you can really get to very, very specific intent of where people are at on the internet and what they're focusing in on, and very, very specific, what are they looking to do on Google right now. So on the next slide here, I'll hand it back over to Carl and Amber to review some results by the tactics.
Awesome, thanks, Jason. So we were really impressed at the Fish and Boat Commission with the results from all of these different digital marketing campaigns. So you can see through the graph, what's kind of the most telling to me is that through the total campaign cost being about $55,000, the estimated revenue, which I'll explain what that means, coming out to $1.9 million in agency revenue from fishing license sales was tremendous for us. So that little star, that little asterisk by estimated revenue, essentially is there for us to remind us to tell you that we couldn't quite tell through our computer system exactly how much a purchase went through as. So our licensing system is being upgraded in mid-January, and we should be able to fully track things at that point. But there was a glitch in the middle of our campaigns that allowed us to see when folks completed a purchase, but not know exactly what they purchased through that. We know that for sure they purchased a license, but if they purchased anything else, you know, like an Erie permit or a trout stamp, we wouldn't necessarily know the total cost of their cart. So what we did is we took the total license sales number for those particular campaign periods, did an average to come up with the estimated revenue earned during that time period. Carl, do you have anything to add?
Oh, I don't.
Okay, I guess the last thing I'll mention on this slide is just with the display ads. You can tell that through the amount that we spent and the amount of estimated revenue that we got back, that was our most costly ad to convert over into sales. So we did make an adjustment about midway through our campaigns to say, okay, display ads clearly aren't as profitable as we were hoping they were going to be. The SEM and the social media is certainly where we'd like to put our funds. So we'll do that. We'll pull the display ads. So you might have been wondering why the campaign cost is a bit lower for that, because we did it for the first half, and then for the second half of the campaign period, we did pull the display ads to be able to put more of our funding towards the more profitable options. Next slide, please. So this graph shows the digital contribution to our license sales. The Outdoor Shop is what we call our license sales platform. So you'll see the percentages throughout the months, and really our goal was to increase license sales during the summer months where we don't usually sell as many licenses. We sell a lot at the beginning of the year, and then it kind of trickles down, but really after June, we don't see a lot of license sales. So it was really tremendous for us to be able to say that we contributed 42.6% and 46.7% of sales in July and August, because those are really large percentages for us in PA. at least as far as license sales, especially being able to say those came from our digital ads that were placed through the help of Gavin, and of course through RBFF funding. So these percentages are really great for us. March is kind of an average number. April starts to pick up a little bit. You may be noticing that dip around June. That's simply because we were in between campaigns and kind of moving funding from one thing to the next. So we did, of course, keep doing some of our campaigns in June and putting funding forth, but not as much as we did in the other months. So that's really what that dip's for, nothing other than just, transitioning from one campaign to the next, moving our funding around where we felt it would be the most profitable. But the next slide, Carl's going to go over exactly what was spent per month and give you a better idea of where we landed on that.
Okay, this graph is basically a replica of what Amber showed you earlier. It shows the portion of the total online sales that was trackable back to the digital marketing campaign. Because it's percentages, it is a little deceiving. It's not suggesting we sold more licenses in August than we did in May. It's what was the total contribution. Just keep in mind, again, one of our goals was, could we drive sales during those off seasons? In May, we sold 19,000 licenses. July, 12,000. So that gives you, some sense of the nature of the magnitude here. But you can see that we were successful in having the digital media or the digital marketing drive nearly half the sales that occurred online in the months of July and August. And you can see that it corresponds with that decrease in funding that Amber mentioned that occurred in June. Now, May is a little deceiving too, because we typically sell about 16% of our licenses online, but because of the restrictions related to the COVID pandemic, we saw a significant increase in online traffic. Half of the licenses we sold in April were sold online, and we broke our single day record for unit sales on April 7th. And about 44% of the total of all of our licenses sold were in May, were sold online. So I think we can confidently say that the contribution that the digital marketing made was diluted just because people were forced to buy their licenses online, because many of our retailers, our license agents, were closed. Next, please.
So this is kind of where we get into some SME advice and how we took some things and what I had a handful of minutes like I do, what would I tell each one of you? So my advice is to look for that search intent. We want to create the campaigns based upon the goal. So our goal is to sell fishing license. Our goal is to entice family members. Our goal is to engage an Hispanic audience. What is the goal that you're trying to go after? And then we base and create campaigns after that. We always start with a goal first, and then we back into the campaigns, never the reverse. We keep our keywords low. So we want to make sure that we're keeping our ad group about 20 to 25 keywords, right around there. We want to make sure that the keywords that we're putting in are the intent. We always want to make sure that we, inside of Google Ads, we can link to your analytics. You can also link Search Console. There are two different accounts. They both need to be set up. You can do this through just individually through analytics and linking them together. You can also use Google Tag Manager or GTag. There's a lot of different ways you can do it. Any way you slice it, this really needs to be done. This is how you get into the machine learning behind Google. So Google makes money when people click on your ad, and they want to be able to display your ad to the correct person who's making that search. And they can't do that unless you're providing them feedback. And that's where your analytics come in. So you're actually giving them information back. And then we also want to optimize for conversion and impression. So are you looking for a statewide awareness campaign versus like a litter and anti-litter and keeping the waterways clean? Or are you going very specifically to target fishing licenses, a boat launch permit, whatever that is? There's two different ways to optimize it: impression versus conversion. If you're selling fishing licenses and that's what you want to do, then conversion's your baby there. That's what you want to go after. In the graphic here on the right-hand side, you can kind of see it looks like it's going back on itself, and it really is. Like I said, you want to create your campaign based off of a goal. And then you're going to do keyword research through one of those tools that I mentioned earlier, Moz, SEMrush, Google Keyword Planner, however you're going to do it, or if you're using a provider like Gavin or someone else, they're going to go through that keyword research and they're going to finalize things. And then when they do that, they're going to base their ad copy and design off of that. The one thing that we did not speak about, and PA Fish and Boat does have, is a landing page. So when you're clicking through a fishing license, you're clicking through and you're learning about the options to be able to buy a fishing license in Pennsylvania. You can buy it for how long, frequently asked questions, and then you click and purchase it. It's never directly into the e-commerce where it's a wonky thing. You're going to lose people's interest. So when you do the ad design, making sure that the landing page, you're going to build the campaign and target your audience. So I'm targeting avid anglers in Pennsylvania in the Southeast between these dates, and this is my budget. And then you're going to start to build that campaign and those keywords around that. And then the next thing is when you launch it and everything's running, having your Google Analytics and your Search Console and everything kind of pulling together, you're going to start to track and measure and then report out on those. So, and you'll be able to see that in near real time. And you're feeding information back to Google and saying, hey, I tagged the click button and I tagged the thank you page at the tail end of it. And that's the ideal scenario. I want someone to click buy and then get to the thank you page, because that means that someone purchased it. I need more people like that. Go find me more. Google will say thank you and they'll give you more of those people. So when you tell Google that they're doing a good job, they love that and they will give you more. The tail end of that is, that's when it's set up where a lot of things start to fall apart, is that people start to think that that's where your work is done. And your work isn't really only starting. So after you build everything and after you got everything running, it's making sure that things are running and you're optimizing the campaign. Amber spoke earlier about, we put some really great imagery out and we had things out, but probably midway through the campaign, we start to realize that, the imagery is great and it's still hitting people. Let's use it for remarketing and let's really push some of the funds back on the search engine, because that's where we're garnering a lot of that attention. That's where we're really optimizing that. We're also looking at those specific campaigns inside of those. We're trying to see the traffic coming in is through these specific keywords. Is there keywords that we need to modify? Do they need to be adjusted? And we're pushing them and making them live. You really want to check in, if not on a daily basis, you really want to be checking in once a week to make sure that things are working. The last thing you want to do is to make something, set it and forget it, and you walk away, and a week and a half later, you come back, still knowing that you have 3 months left in your campaign and your entire budget's been blown in the first 3 weeks because no one was behind the wheel. Like I said, there's services out there that can do this, like WordStream and Optimizer. They offer free automated machine learning. There's other services like Gavin and other advertising companies that kind of do this and put a human behind the wheel. There's advantages to either one of them. Obviously, I work in an ad campaign or an ad company, so I would always recommend having a human behind the wheel. Having those extra set of eyes really does things. And if you're doing it yourself internally or you're doing it with a third party, I would always say make sure you keep the lines of communication open. Should never be at the end of a campaign getting a tail end report saying everything's done. Do you want to continue? Should always have some ongoing conversations of here's where we're at. This is our performance that we're seeing on our side. Carl, Amber, are you seeing it on your side? How are things working out? It really helps us adjust things as well. So if I had some advice to tell anybody just starting out or anybody who's going in to tweak things, that's what I would say. So the next slide is some lessons learned, and I'll pass those over to Amber and Carl.
Carl, if you're speaking, we can't hear you.
Okay, sorry. In terms of some of the lessons learned, continuity was really, we believe, to be very important. That, as we've mentioned earlier, we've been working with Gavin for many years, and each year we've been able to build on the successes of the previous. And because we're dealing with the same staff, they get to learn more about what we're after, a lot more about our business itself, and you know, the level of service, as I said, has been outstanding, but we've been able to build on those successes, and we think this year we made some light year level advances with some of the analytics that we were able to modify thanks to the RBFF grant. Almost all of this would be impossible without the cooperation of our our licensing section or your IT staff. They were very helpful in making the connections between the technical aspects of the e-commerce site and working with Jason and the other staff at Gavin. Because the systems, it was originally designed back in 2007 and was rather archaic. And so it didn't quite work as well as any of us would have liked. And that's where this baseline data on e-commerce transaction from previous years was very helpful, because we wanted to see what the flow looked like in terms of sales, relying on agents or the online platform. And that gave us a starting point to evaluate what kind of contributions we could drive to the e-commerce site. The other really important lesson was that search engine marketing offered us the best return. And as Jason noted, we did redirect dollars kind of midstream to focus money on search engine marketing for sales of fishing licenses. And then the social media and the display ads were kind of to build awareness. And last, but certainly not the least, is even if you're working with an agency, even if you're working with other folks within your own agency, it's important that you understand the mechanics of the campaign at a most basic level, but also at a little more advanced level, so you can explain it to leadership. We've got a number of folks that their only exposure to Google is as a consumer, and we found out that in some cases they don't even do a lot of online activity. So it was really important for us to communicate the mechanics as well as the results. And that's very important if your agency is kind of built on traditions like ours, where for many years prior to working with Gavin, our focus was print advertising as well as radio. Next.
Okay, so in summary, about half of our July and August license sales were linked to one of these digital marketing campaigns. Again, we were just really impressed with the results, really glad that we were able to go through these campaigns with the folks from Gavin, and of course with the support of RBFF. So thanks to the grant that we were so graciously given, we did invest $10,000 and generated $1.9 million in license revenue, including trout permits. So we were successful in tracking customers, but sadly we were unsuccessful in getting exact details on those transactions. But we do feel confident in the data that we have and in the averages that we were able to come up with. It's about a little more than a license sale per campaign and per customer. So we do feel very confident since we know that they at least bought a license. In a lot of cases, we think that they bought more than that, but we're comfortable with using the $1.9 million in license revenue, and certainly even more comfortable with the fact that we only invested $10,000 out of pocket, and that our BFF was gracious to grant us the other 55. So again, like Carl said, we will be building on these results for 2021. That is one of the positive things that well, not one of them, but one of the biggest positive things working with Gavin for several years, that we do always build on the results, and we get better and better results every year as we more clearly define for them what we're looking for, as we shift strategies, as they share with us their expertise and are able to say, this is what worked last year, here's things that we think that would work for where our goals are hitting for 2021. So we're very excited to move forward, to continue to do campaigns with Gavin and hopefully with our BFF in 2021. And as I mentioned previously, our new licensing system should debut in mid-January. So that should make tracking a lot easier for us as well. And that's all I have for that slide.
Great, thank you very much, Mandy, Jason, Amber, and Carl. That was great information. So if anyone has questions, we do have a few so far, but if anyone has more, please go ahead and type them into the questions box. But before I begin, I just want to mention that the grant, the RBFF grant that has been mentioned a few times, is actually most of that funding came from the AFWA Multi-State Conservation Grant Program. So we were lucky enough to get one of those grants that we then granted out. $40,000 per state came from AFWA, and then RBFF contributed $15,000, and then we asked the state to do $10,000. So that's where the full $65,000 for their campaign came from. So a lot of it, and thanks to the AFWA multi-state grant. So we do have a few questions. The first one is for Mandy, I believe. On the very first slide, when you were talking about Gavin Advertising, you gave 3 acronyms to describe it. I think it was DBE, SBA, and something else. Can you explain what all 3 of those acronyms are?
Sure, not a problem. They essentially affirm that we're a certified minority-owned company. So DBE is a diverse business enterprise. It's often valuable to a lot of state organizations, especially if you receive any type of grant funding or government funding specifically tied to some form of transportation. And obviously, as you know, that can affect a lot of things, including waterways. SBA is Small Business Association, so we are certified as an SBA, Small Business Organization. And then WBENC is a national certification affirming that we have been a verified woman-owned business. We get those certifications every year, and it allows our clients to ensure they're meeting requirements for doing business with minority-owned organizations.
Awesome, that's great. Thanks for explaining those. That's really good to know.
Yep.
And the next question we have is on the results by tactics slide. Are the purchasers new license or renewals, or combination of both? So I guess in other words, is it new business being driven by SEM? I think Amber had been talking about that slide.
Amber, do you want to take it, or do you want me to?
No, go for it, Carl.
Okay. The simple answer is we don't know. The system as it was currently constructed didn't allow us to interface back with the license database. The new version of our license system, PALS 2.0, we are assured by our vendor that through an API, we'll be able to connect back through all the Google dashboards to be able to tell us some of that information. We do know from analyzing license sales through the end of August that our recruitment rate was up much higher, and nearly 1/3 of all the licenses we sold this year were to people who had no prior purchase. So our actually our retention rate from 2019 was down slightly. So the simple answer is we don't know. But if we assume that somebody who bought a license online, somebody who bought a license, there's similarities across those populations, which I know is a very big assumption. We could assume that a third of these were brand new customers. We won't know for this year what percentage of that 57,000 were actually brand new customers.
Gotcha. Okay. The next question is, were you able to track increase in items per transaction and dollars per transaction?
That's a very good question, and it's on the list of things that we want to try to track for next year.
Sure.
As we said before, the nature of our license system, when we met with the Gavin staff, we had all of those things in place to be able to track that and be able to look to see what the revenue per transaction was. And because of the nature of it, it worked in the testing website. And then when it went live, we learned that there were some differences that wiped out some of those really important codes. So no, we don't know. And number two, this year is the first that we've ever really looked at those transactions that were done online and began to do some comparisons in terms of the demographics of those who are purchasing. So we didn't have a baseline to be able to say what it was per each shopping cart in terms of revenue. But it's on the list for next year.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like this year is great to kind of figure that stuff out to make changes for next year. Another question.
I will say, if I could chime in real quick. So on the outdoor shopping for Pennsylvania, you can purchase a fishing license or a hunting license. So while we can separate the transactional information of who clicked through, when we go through to the other side of a final conversion, it kind of gets muddied on the backside. So while Carl can pull information on his side to tell us how many came through that were very specifically coming back through the Google Analytics side, on the live version, that was the limitation.
Gotcha. Okay. Another question is, with COVID, most states have seen results of total sales up about 14% last year over this year. Resident license sales have been up around 18%, and even non-resident license sales have either stayed flat or increased slightly. Did your campaign exceed the national average of these trends? Is that something you looked at last year over this year?
I'm not sure, Carl, correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not sure that we know whether the campaign specifically did, just because we weren't able to track whether they were correlated to last year's purchases or not. But overall at the Fish and Boat Commission, our license sales are up 20%. So we really were pleased with that. And our voluntary permit sales went really through the roof, which surprised us the most since those are not required purchases. But Carl, do you have anything else to add?
I think one of the things that we ask is, did they come to us to buy a license on the outdoor shop because they had no choice, or was it because they saw the search engine marketing worked? And obviously we will not know with a high degree of certainty as to whether that is indeed the case. But we do know that particularly for July and August, when we see license decline significantly, about 80% of our licenses are sold prior to 4th of July. When we've got nearly half of the licenses sold in July and August were trackable back to the digital marketing campaign, I think we can pretty confidently say that this is not peak traffic, this is not a peak season, and they were driven to us through the search engine marketing. Again, going back to Jason and looking at that motivation, it's a pretty safe assumption that if someone's purchased a license from us previously, they know how and where to get it. And so in terms of, did we compare to national trends? Overall, we're up 19, I think it's 19.25%. And that's been holding steady throughout the year, so that we continue to see some increase, even in August and into September. So do we know if this is part of the I believe it's being referred to as the COVID bump? We don't. But when we look at, again, those average contribution across the year, we see those peaks occurring when we were spending a lot of money on search engine marketing. I think we can pretty confidently say that these are customers that we probably wouldn't have reached otherwise.
Gotcha. Great. Okay. Thanks. The next question is, for the SEM portion of the campaign, how many different ads did you run with different headlines or verbiage and different extensions?
That's a really good question. So on any campaign that we have, we'll generally have anywhere between 5 and 15. So when we're looking at very specifically for like a pre-trial, without knowing off the top of my head, we probably had on the average of 10 to 15 ad sets running, targeting a wide variety of people. And some of those were Hispanic, targeted at Hispanic audiences, and the same. For headlines, we would probably always have 3 to 4. And then we always try to do, and we do 3 to 4 for the reason of that AI, the machine learning of Google allows Google to tune in and put things up. The site link extensions, we always want to make sure that we have learn more and going to our landing page, buy now, things of that nature, so that Google can place and display them appropriately per the device and also per what the people are searching for as well. So I know it's a kind of a roundabout answer. I don't know off the top of my head, but I would say on any given campaign for anything we do, probably have about 10 to 15 different campaigns running, targeting a wide variety of different audiences. Just I know all states are different, but there's some similarities that are going to be between. So you're going to talk to someone in near Lake Erie a little bit differently than you're going to talk to someone around Philadelphia. So we want to make sure that we're targeting and going after an angler versus an avid angler versus someone who's maybe a lapsed person who we're just trying to entice back again.
Nice, great. Okay. The last question we have right now, please feel free to ask more if you guys have any questions. We have a few minutes left. But the last one we have currently is, do you use UTM tracking to track results in Google Analytics?
So we do use UTM tracking in a wide variety of areas. The other thing in which we do is we very specifically, we know some of the limitations of the PAL system that Carl had spoke about. So on our landing page, where we direct all of the traffic to first, and we are able to tag individual buttons and actions on that landing page. So that way, not only can we get things through the UTM or through the ad click, we can also see what they did. So we can see the traffic that came from maybe a Facebook, or maybe it was an email that went out, or something of that nature. We can separate out the traffic, but not only that, then we can see granularly what action did they click on. Like we know they clicked on buy a fishing license, but what fishing license button enticed them, and where on the page did they click on the call to action? Do we need to move something around? So if you look at the landing page this year versus the way it looked last year, it's a little bit different, and that's a direct result of the campaign outcomes that in working with Carl and Amber.
Okay, great. Doesn't look like we have any more questions. So I think we can wrap it up. Thank you all again for the great information. I think this is very helpful. And to all attendees, please remember to take the survey before exiting the webinar. We definitely appreciate your feedback. This was recorded, so we will, I'll send an email to all attendees when the information is online for and available for download. Thank you all very much and enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks.